Welcome to Overcoming Overthinking. We all identify as overthinkers, yes? It's not really a question of whether we overthink or not. It's a question of how soon can we catch ourselves when it happens. Every time I sit down to write a new chapter, I realize I've already been overthinking it. So as soon as the mind latches onto something, it takes off. There are sensations related to overthinking. Most of us know when we go down a rabbit hole, we get to that point where it just gets so ridiculous, so anxious, so small, so limiting, so nonsensical. That we come out of it. Something snaps us out of it. We return to the present moment, being engaged with what is, what's in front of us. And as we come out of the rabbit hole, we can feel how it's like coming out of a dense fog back into clarity. The clarity of our senses, sense perceptions. So the question is, how can we catch ourselves sooner? So we don't spend upwards of 2/3 of our day ruminating. That's what we do. We spend 70-80% of our day thinking about things that have no relevancy to the task at hand. Are about the past, the future, regrets, shame, guilt, replaying same scenarios, wanting different outcomes, or projecting into the future things we want to have happen. Anything to avoid being here. Because here, the moment of unfolding, the moment of happening, it's not something that can be controlled. It's happening. It's the formless taking form, the unknown becoming known. So in that now, in that moment, there's really not much for the mind to do. It's really just about experiencing what's there. As soon as something is identified as pleasant, as soon as something is identified as unpleasant, the mind uses that as an opportunity to judge, and label, define, control, and to know. At least it thinks it knows. And therein lies one of the primary illusions of the mind. It always wants to control things, is that it thinks it can know things. It can know whether something's good or bad, right or wrong, true or false, for you, against you. Nothing can really be known. The idea of knowing something is based on the temporary isolation of one moment, assigning it some label, some judgment. But the next moment it can change, become something different. So the knowing is really a reaction to a moment, holding on to it, isolating it, amplifying it, lingering on it. And as we linger, as we react, it keeps us stuck. We miss out on what the next moment might bring. And we also create drama, stories, where there aren't really any. If we had stayed with that moment only for as long as it lasted, and stayed with it as it passed, and were available to the next moment as it arises, then that previous reaction, previous judgment, previous drama never have happened. Would have experienced the sensations of the moment, but as we let them pass, we move into the next moment. We stay in sync. We enter what we call a flow state, what athletes call the zone. And it's a quiet state, a calm state, a state in which we no longer need to effort our way forward. Our body moves almost on its own. Intelligence of what to do next just reveals itself. Even athletes whose job it is to be embodied rarely enter this state because there's something that interferes. And that's our thoughts. As soon as there are thoughts about what we should be doing, what we ought to be doing, what we could be doing, other things we could be doing, what the consequences might be, the outcome, what others think of us, who we are, all of that interrupts the flow. We live in a world that is constantly looking to elicit a reaction from us. A world that mistakenly thinks that more choice means more freedom. It just takes a simple visit to the supermarket aisle and looking at a variety of soy milks, cereals, or olive oils, how quickly the mind shifts into choice overload, to analysis paralysis. So this very mind we take out into life and try to negotiate, constantly validating, controlling, steering, willing our way forward. It just leads to a lot of overthinking. So that's what the mind does, as long as we're navigating from the head. reactivity. We are in an overthinking state. This is a very different state, living from the body, from felt truth, from resonance. That's where we feel what's right for us, almost in a blink response kind of way. And what anyone else says, what anyone else recommends, or tries to persuade us to believe or do, we can listen to without feeling confused or shaky in our own foundation. We can evaluate not from reactivity, but from a clear mind. And all this reactivity is ultimately not a reaction to our environment, but a reaction to how we feel about our environment. And those reactions, those feelings are the way we're conditioned. I have a friend who's a child psychologist. He's got a client, a little 6-year-old girl whose mother is a pro athlete and had an injury and walks with a limp. And the 6-year-old girl walks with a limp. We absorb these things at an early age without filters, without knowing any better. And they become us. We think that's us. So as these feelings, these sensations arise in response to our environment, the mind reacts, judges things that are pleasant, we cling to, things that are unpleasant, we judge, we push down. But in both cases, we interrupt the arising and passing of a feeling. And in that interruption, we create an unfinished loop, an unfinished emotion that now sits inside of us. Layers and layers of unfinished emotions. And the mind, doing what it does best, tries to fix these loops. It looks to the environment and looks to possible solutions. So our relationship with our feelings, the constant interruption and judging of our feelings, winds up being the source of much of our overthinking. Mind trying to troubleshoot. So the cure, if you will, is not to manage your thoughts, manage your feelings, control your thoughts, control your feelings, numb your thoughts, numb your feelings. It's about learning to let them be. This is something many, not most, modern institutions, especially in the West, have completely misunderstood or aren't even aware of. But the root of many of our ailments, the roots of our behavior, is energetic in nature. There's energy that is stuck, that keeps getting triggered, The solution is not to override the trigger, but to find a way to close the loop. So get back to feeling your feelings fully, which is our natural state. Never meant to be in a constantly reactive, constantly judgmental, constantly high state of judgment. Creates spikes, dopamine and cortisol and our heart rate. The mind thinks that these spikes carry meaning. That the bigger the emotion, the more real it is, more reliable it is, more valid it is. And of course, the opposite is the case. We're not meant to constantly be in a high. And of course, when we do want the high, we want to avoid the lows. We just want the peaks, not the valleys. It doesn't work that way. But rather to recognize that most of our energy goes into our reaction to our feelings, not the feelings themselves. Our natural, normal feelings are like little wavelets. Come and go, they arise and pass. And they leave behind an imprint of wisdom. They tell us what resonates, what's right for us. It's not based on mental comparison or analysis. It's not based on looking what others are doing. It's not based on what we think we know. It's based on what feels right in this moment. The only thing that's real. So thinking that we know something, that we can determine its value intellectually, is one of the great illusions, one of the great engines of overthinking. Another source is thinking that we should have known better. Often we reflect on an event and we get all upset that we made the decision we made and it resulted in the consequences. And then we berate ourselves for not having acted differently. But even just logically, you can think about it. You know better now because you made that decision. Because it took that course of events. So, the idea that you regret a decision is illogical. There's a deeper lesson and deeper understanding in all of that, and that's how we learn, that's how we grow. That's what we're here for. We're not meant to be perfect. Certainly not off the bat. And even in the long run, there's never that place where nothing will change. Everything stands still. You have everything under control. No more decisions need to be made. You no longer have to grow. As long as we're in these bodies, in this dimension, on this planet, So different rooms. So the acceptance of impermanence, that everything is ever changing, goes a long way in quelling the incessant stream of thoughts, so many of which are focused on a finite view of life, on the concept of arranging your circumstances a certain way so that they never move, they never change. The acceptance of impermanence can't happen in the head. Acceptance is never a mental exercise. It's not intellectual acrobatics when we somehow think about something differently or reframe something differently. But rather, acceptance is accepting how we feel. Letting our feelings be. Letting them express themselves fully. And that's what brings us back to the flow state. And interestingly, with all the efforting that the mind exerts, it's acceptance that moves us forward the quickest. You can feel the moment you accept something, you move through it. The mind thinks, well, by accepting something, I'm making it permanent. Now I'm going to be however way I don't like about myself forever. It's not how energy works. If you resist, if you keep judging, you stay entangled. The knot even grows. But by accepting, you move through it. It dissolves. And then you're free to take action. Not reactive action, not action born of judgment, of resistance, but rather of seeing things clearly, accepting the moment as it is, working with what you've got. And in that moment, we enter a space of collaboration. Defense, resisting, it's really just us against the world. And when we accept, we enter the moment. We make ourselves available for divine insight. We have a perspective on the situation that is bigger than just our little selves. Whatever actions we feel called to make are of universal nature. They include the well-being of everyone involved. So by being free of reactivity, and making oneself available to the moment, we become co-creators, facilitators, participants in the unfolding of life. And there's no more potent place to be. It's a place of both simplicity and also incredible diversity, incredible creativity that wants to express itself through us in our own unique way. It's a place of both calm, but also a certain action-orientedness. Because there's nothing more exciting than being called to take action, not from self, from identification with the little me, than receiving orders from the creative cloud, the greater consciousness. And that's where we get to live a life that is far beyond anything we could ever imagine. As long as we're imagining from ourself, we're going to be limited to ourself, to who we think we are, to what we already know. Nothing new can ever come from what we already know. In fact, that's the best way to repeat the past, to repeat the blind patterns, is just to act from knowing. Sometimes the questions arise, well, if you're not acting from knowing, are you just floating aimlessly through life? Questions might even arise, are you being reckless, without responsibility? Questions might arise, are you being passive? Just going to roll over and be a doormat for life. Anything that happens, you just accept it. There's nothing sharper and clearer and more forceful, if you will, than inner knowing, than the felt truth, the body's resonance. Living from that place results in instant clarity, instant action, a type of acceleration that we would never experience if we were still in our head debating, planning, analyzing, waiting for the right moment, waiting till we're ready to take action. This resonance is backed by an ocean of energy, of inspiration. Compared to the mind that might fight motivation one moment, but talk itself out of it the next. A mind that is looking for ease and looking for certainty before taking action. And if anything, certainty follows action. And even then, ultimately, certainty doesn't ever come as long as you stay in the flow. There's never a moment where you can say something is something. The moment you do think something is something, take yourself out of it. Coming back to catching ourselves sooner when we start overthinking. Whenever we catch the moment being different than what we want it to be, that we find ourselves going down some rabbit hole, there's a frustration that sets in of why can't I control this unwieldy monkey mind? And those are the golden moments in which we can practice acceptance. The moment we recognize that reality is different than what we want it to be, how smoothly can we come back to what it is? How effortlessly, without frustration, without dismay, can we return to the moment as it is? And that takes some practice, because the first time we try that, we recognize the frustration that we can't control this monkey mind of ours. Because we've been taught to do lots of things, taught to invest in our education, our relationships, our personality, the way we dress even, in our career, our investments, our homes. But we haven't been taught to invest in our stillness, in taming the mind, stillness. It's the stillness that provides the contrast to all the doing. It creates a foundation from which we can articulate, from which we can experience whether we ought to take action. Is it really worth breaking the silence to say what I'm about to say? Is it meaningful enough? Is it accurate enough? Is it kind enough? Is it true enough? Or is it worth breaking the silence to do what I'm about to do? Without that foundation and stillness, our doing is rudderless. Just constant doing, endless doing. We only realize that we've been overdoing when we exhaust ourselves, when we hit rock bottom, when we burn out, when we hit a wall, because we hadn't recognized and developed a way to sense when we're going too far in the doing, whether the doing was still worth it, whether we're going in the right direction to begin with. And even more importantly, this foundation in stillness creates a contrast on whether or not the next moment demands something else. The mental doing, the effort doing, typically involves setting an outcome, creating a goal, making a plan, and then rolling up our sleeves, working hard, pursuing, executing the steps we thought we have to take. And it leaves us in a constricted, closed-off state to recognizing anything new that might be informing our behavior. any opportunities to pivot, any changing conditions that require a response. Life is always changing. To think that we know today what will work tomorrow, to think that we know today what will make us happy tomorrow, it's illogical. Tomorrow will be a different person. Tomorrow will be a different day. In whatever we do, there has to be enough flexibility, enough of an opening, enough receiving mode to be able to flow with wherever the stream takes us. And the moment we want things our way, the moment we resist the stream, things get harder. The more we resist, the more we insist, the more we swim upstream. So even there, modern society might implore you to just suck it up and keep pushing, try harder, just do it. And if it's not working, you're the problem. You need to fix yourself. You are not good enough. All kinds of issues arise when we are led exclusively by the mind. It's subject to all those influences from outside. One day it's one thing, next day it's the next. There's just no stability, consistency, calm. There's no love in that. There's no acceptance, no allowing, no flow, no seeing things as they are, no responding, only reaction, only judgment, only control. So then, no wonder our life feels hard and heavy and anxious. Mind is actually doing the best it can. We've instructed it to figure out our life. So it does what it does best, and that is to compare. And the comparison drives us crazy. It does best what it does to analyze. And the constant analyzing drives us crazy. So it clings. And the clinging drives us crazy. We all at some point recognize that the way we're living, the way we're taught to live, the cookie cutter template we've been given to know life ahead of living it, doesn't work. You can achieve some things by willing your way forward. It's a really hard way to go. You sacrifice the whole journey, which is your life. There really aren't any outcomes in life. It's a moment, just like any other. You might assign some meaning to it, that's fine. Accomplishments deserve to be celebrated. That moment passes just like every other. And we have to be ready to keep living. Get up again, to make breakfast again, to do our chores again. Outcomes don't absolve us from living. Outcomes happen while living. So the key again is to notice what it feels like when we get lost in thought. And to notice it sooner. And the mind and the nervous system being the incremental nature that it is, this change happens very gradually. There's a healthy balance between staying contained and staying open to change. A little too much one way or the other doesn't do us any good. Either we stay stuck, or if we force too much change, it gets chaotic. So again, there's this lesson of acceptance, of things changing at their own pace, in their own way, in their own time. Our lessons coming to us in their own way, in their own time. And it all points back to the central ask that we're here to honor, and that is to let ourselves be. To create that foundation in stillness and only speak and act when we feel absolutely called to. That's why with an increasing awareness practice, we seek more stillness. We fall in love with stillness. It's the being state that nurtures us. And of course, you'll have ideas in that state to start a new company, a new product, a new relationship, family, a new endeavor, travel, creative pursuits, but they no longer come from you. They're inspired by something else, your higher self, if you want to call it that. And when you're open enough, continuously enough, then the biggest problem really becomes too much inspiration, too many insights, too much growth. You might get frustrated with constant expansion, which takes energy. We're still in this human body, having a human experience, and there are limitations. Still need to eat, still need to sleep, still need to do our work, nurture our family. So even post-enlightenment, or I call it that, the challenge remains acceptance. Continue to accept who you are, where you are, not wanting yourself to be different. And again, by accepting who we are and where we are and not wanting ourselves to be different, that's what moves us forward the quickest. That's the place from which we expand the most. Because we're in non-resistance to our own evolution. It's quite exceptional when you think about it, how much effort we put into resisting our own evolution. All day long, we scroll to distract, we talk to distract, We stay busy to distract. We wind up saying yes, even though we want to say no. We wind up staying silent, even though we should speak up. We wind up pleasing other people, for image, for approval. All kinds of behaviors that spring forth when we're not living by resonance. We start to see a world as a dangerous place with a dim outlook. It's because the mind is always trying to keep us safe. When we're always in the mind, we see everything as a threat. That becomes our lens on life. And that feeds the overthinking mind. All the things that could happen, that might happen, that should happen, shouldn't happen. So much noise. All for nothing. It's real while we're in it. It's not really real. It's made up. So it's not even about visualizing our best life. It's not about making up a different future. It's not about reframing, positive thinking, pulling in what we want to have happen. It's about learning to let things happen. Because the things that we want to have happen rarely contain the challenges that make us grow. They rarely contain the unease that makes us dig deeper.
So when you say we should be, instead of being proactive, we should be reactive?
The allowing yourself to feel, good question. The allowing yourself to feel the natural feeling itself informs your action, not the reactivity to the sensation. Then you're acting from reactivity. But to allow yourself to feel the feeling, and that means letting it pass, what remains is an imprint of resonance, of this is something that's for me. Then you can pursue that, and this is not for me, and you can let that go. And in that resonance, you become more proactive than ever before.
The problem for most people is we're all operating from fear.
Mm-hmm.
When the base is fear, you know what happens then.
Yeah. So the fear is a sensation again. An example is two people experiencing the smell of smoke. Person A maybe survived a house fire as a kid, and the smell of smoke evokes negative, unpleasant sensations. They have a panic reaction. So the smell of smoke shows up as heavy breathing or chest pain, whatever it may be. Person B, exact same sense perception with smoke, has memories of barbecue, campfires, summer camp, pleasant memories, and that same smoke shows up as a pleasant sensation. So the initial sensation is already conditioned behavior. It's a conditioned interpretation. And in both cases, the first person will experience fear. The next person will experience pleasantries. But in both cases, they're not experiencing the smoke as it is, the objective reality of what is. Because if they did, then they would, oh, there's smoke. Let's look around and see what it actually is. Is it a fire? Okay, then I can act, and act clearly. Not from the fear of the past, not distorting it, not overreacting, but there's a reaction to things as they are, a proactive approach. And the other person B, same thing. It's like person B is not coloring this in some artificial way, and if there is an actual fire, not getting delayed in taking action. So both people are reacting to their feelings, their sensations about the event. And what the Buddha ultimately taught us is that by observing those sensations, the observation, the unbiased, neutral observation, allows those stuck feelings to complete, the loop to complete, so that they dissolve. And it sends a message to the initial interpretive part of the brain that I no longer need to interpret smoke as fear. And I no longer need to interpret smoke as pleasant. Now we're in objective reality. Now both people are living in presence. And that's a state of clarity, and a state of being alert, a state of not distorting what's there. Could be an example of an argument in relationship, where if you react to the trigger of somebody crying and take that personally, it blocks you from seeing what they need, where they're coming from. Maybe they just need to feel seen and heard. They need to feel compassion. But if we're reacting to an unpleasant feeling because maybe our parents told us that it's not safe to cry, then again we're reacting to our own stuff and not being available to help in this situation, to be present with the situation, to facilitate the situation in the most benign and healthy way for the other person, because we have our own stuff that we're bringing in. And so, yes, most people respond out of fear. Most of the fear is imagined fear. If there was something actually dangerous in front of us, you can't really call that fear even. It's just fight or flight or freeze response. You kick into that automatically. But the fear that debilitates us is the mental fear, the projections, the imagination, the reaction to how we feel. And that's the part we can come out of. You don't have to live from that place. But few, if any, institutions teach us how to deal with that fear. They give us pills to numb our fear. They give us couch therapy and other modalities. They all have some effect, I'm sure. But very few go to the root of it. That there is something that wasn't allowed to complete. Most likely we didn't have the capacity at the time to allow it to complete. Something happened too suddenly. We were too young. We didn't have the tools. So there's some unfinished emotion there that we can go back to and hold space for and allow it to finish. And then we come out of those fears. And we become available to what's actually happening without distorting it through that fear lens, that control lens, that needing it to be different for whatever reason lens.
So why do you think 95% of all personal development programs, whether it's Tony Robbins or any other celebrity that we're talking about here, all their programs, 95% of the students fail? That's the failure right there.
I don't know what they do when they go back from the retreats, from the events. I know from my own events, retreats, that the follow-up program is very important. I recently did a month-long program for clinically depressed people. And the 30 days was followed by another 45 days of at home treatments and tracking and treatment. It's just when we're back in our old environment that basically that's where the behaviors spawned from in the first place. It could be many things. The people that we're surrounded by, probably one of the biggest factors. Their neurosis, their triggers, if it's family especially, those triggers run the deepest. That just brings all the stuff back up in a big way. That's why it's very helpful to go somewhere else for a while to work on some of the deeper issues. It's a world that constantly encourages us to be busy, to stay busy, and if we're not busy, then we look lazy, we look irresponsible, we feel like we failed. So we get all kinds of messaging, sometimes overt, sometimes subliminal, that we should be doing something. There's some strange behaviors we've developed as humans to avert and avoid this discomfort with stillness, with self-reflection. Waiting is one of them. We wait on average an hour a day, waiting for the bus, traffic, the elevator, waiting in line at the coffee shop, the red light, the doctor's office, for our food to arrive. Lots of waiting. And we don't use that hour, I think in the big city it's even more, to practice presence, to focus on our sensations, to do inner work, to even just really fully engage with our senses, to actually see what we're seeing, the detail, the decor, the craftsmanship, the intention that's gone into the place, the fragrance of smells of the flora, or the breeze of the wind, just to feel your aliveness. We don't do that. Instead, we create this artificial state of waiting. And then waiting often turns into worrying, which is slightly more meaningful to the mind because it's doing something even more. So we're conditioned to be so dismissive of being, the being state, in which we're really getting the downloads, the inspiration, the insights about ourselves, about our life, the next chapter, before we go back into doing, before we go back into executing, before we become proactive again, that we need time to rest, to recharge, to realign, to reflect on, I've grown since my last job. Do I really want to just get into another same position or something else calling me? These periods of stillness between jobs, between relationships, but also between activities during the day. We're waiting in a meeting for someone to arrive, or a friend is stuck, delayed, or even the space between words, or the space at the end of our incoming breath, the gap at the end of our outgoing breath. There's space everywhere, all around us. And we don't have to be in it all day. We don't have to be in it half the day, half day being, half day doing. That's not even necessary. But just enough connection maintained to the stillness, to the being, to the connection, so that our doing is informed by it. We're supposed to do. I think that's also what you were implying, is we're not meant to be passive in this life. We're supposed to apply ourselves, and we want to apply ourselves fully. We should apply ourselves fully. But the degree to which we can apply ourselves fully is the degree to which we know ourselves fully. So there's the inner work that has to happen before we can apply ourselves in a meaningful way. And that doesn't mean we should wait till we're perfect. We'll never get there. And in fact, we can discover the meaning, we can discover our truth through the doing. But it's a process. It's going back to, it's never about regretting or shaming yourself that you made a bad decision. You know better now because of the decision you made. And so there's a process to learning, to growing, to expanding, to stopping, to reflect. You can call them the seasons of life. Just like there's night and day, there's light and dark, there's hot and cold. We go through different periods. And again, there's a deep lesson of acceptance in these periods. The tree doesn't complain when the winds come blowing and sometimes even break a branch and it loses its leaves. Somewhere it knows that the tension strengthens its roots and its trunk and the branches that are healthy. And it also knows that the sun will shine again and that it's time to blossom. And again, there's an acceptance in that. And you see it all throughout nature. It's there all the time. Everything is kind of plugged in. Everything is alert, present, in a state of acceptance. There is physical pain. There's no complaint. A squirrel doesn't complain about being a squirrel. Doesn't want to be a rabbit. So the sounds around us are also an invitation to acceptance. If we go by the mind, it's never quiet enough, or it may not even be noisy enough because it enjoys the noise. Whatever it is, it's never enough. So if in that state of never enough, in the grips of our mind, then that's how we feel about life, and how we feel about ourselves. And the solution is never to control more, try harder, fix yourself, compare yourself. I think Einstein said, you can't solve the problem from the place that created it. So we have to come back into a place where not too long ago our ancestors were more regularly, where we're feeling the soil, we're feeling the nature surrounded by natural environments that keep us alert, that keep us grounded, that keep us present. That's how we evolved. The ions flooding into our body when our feet touch the earth. And in modern life, we've just removed ourselves from the natural environments, which has given rise to all these phobias and manias that we're subjected to. Did that answer the question?
Thank you.
Great question. If there are other questions, please feel free to voice them.
I'll ask one. So since it's an overthinking subject, so you said a lot of overthinking happens from our previous, let's say, interaction we had with someone or an event that we had, an event in a certain way. And sometimes we just overthink it because we want to know how we can do it better, for example, in the future. And so what role does the learning from the past experience play in this situation? Because sometimes you do need a bit of overthinking or analyzing it, but also we need to accept how it went, but that comes kind of necessary in many situations. So how to balance that?
Yeah. So being present and being alert to the moment does not mean completely dismissing your experience, or your skills, your expertise. Those are still factors that are important. Those are still elements that are extremely valid. It's just a degree to which we emphasize them at the cost, at the expense of not actually being here, of not actually seeing what is. Hard to put a number on it, but most of what we should be responding to requires us to clearly see the situation. And the more we pull in experience, the more we pull in the past, the more we pull in our professional priesthood, the more we start to color what's happening. And if we do too much of that, you can see, even imagining it, how suddenly we just start to think we have the solution before we even fully take it in. We already jumped to the way we did it in the past. And there are big mental structures in families and companies, different environments where, well, this is how we've always done it. Right? This becomes a reason for keep doing it the same way. Many who experience themselves as black sheep find themselves at odds with the family, are confronted exactly with that. They want to do things differently. They don't want to repeat the old patterns blindly, just for the sake of repetition. So much resistance and difficulty and animosity flows from just wanting to do it differently. Because that's how strong this idea is of, I already know the solution, just do it. This is the way we've always done it, just do it. Everything is about direct experience, so I can't give you a number or a percentage or some explanation. With awareness, you can tune into how much of what element you need, where the balance lies between seeing what's actually there and applying your expertise, applying your experience, and where you start to invade and override and diminish and almost like push away what's actually happening. One of the things I notice in the communication of most people, I was like that too, is that we rarely let them finish talking. A few words in, we already feel like we know what they're going to say. And maybe you do know what they're going to say. But this diminishes the experience of someone expressing themselves, someone feeling heard, feeling seen, which is the most important part of communication. Most of the time, we don't want someone to fix us. We don't want a solution. Don't even want feedback. We just want to express. There's a need to say something. There's a healing, and there's a release, and there's a clarification. We apply scrutiny to some idea, some experience we had. When we express it, we resolve it, we dissolve it in some way. So it's healthy. This is why humans are social animals. When we share, it has a healing effect. But it can have an even bigger healing effect if we don't just trip over each other. If you know me and hang out with me, there's always a gap between when you're done talking and when I start to jump in. And when you start doing that, if you start practicing that, you'll notice that a lot of times you won't have to jump in. There's a resolution that happens on its own. And the other person is all the happier for it. They were able to get something off their chest. In that space that you provided, that you were holding for them, the actual solution to their question perhaps arose, happens all the time. And it's a solution that is so much more tailored, so much more accurate, so much more refined, to the degree that is just right for them. A degree that you, even as your best friend, could never promise or deliver. So much of, coming back to stillness, of our healing, of our growth, of our learning, of our self-realization goes back to having the space to do that. You don't have to think of it as spiritual at all. There's a term in business school called opportunity cost. When you're doing A, you're taking away time and resources from doing B. So if you're always doing, you're taking time and resources away from B. It's really as simple as that.
Does that go the opposite way too? If you always be?
That's a great question. Yeah, if you be too much, then you don't do enough. Over the course of a lifetime, everyone has their own calling in a way, their own path. So if somebody wants to be their whole life, often they become monks or just go sit in a cave, and you can do that. Although I've studied with monks, and they're actually some of the busiest people that I know. Their doing is informed from their being dimension. And again, that leads to being more productive and more efficient, more proactive than before. So there's a natural volition that when we give ourselves enough time, enough breaks to just be, that it catapults us into doing. But again, the doing is not going to be avoidance behavior. It's not going to be compensation behavior. It's not going to be, the reaction to the subconscious stuff, the lack, the fear, the control. It's going to be inspired by the forces of creation that want to come through us. And we're the most co-creative partners to greater consciousness, to formless taking shape. Nature is fairly limited. account the behaviors of the dog. The humans are incredible, can be incredible conduits. And I think this is really what's meant by honoring our existence and honoring our higher self, is to clear the path, to get the little human out of the way, so that we can be that conduit through which life turns into what it really wants to express, which is always based in harmony, always based in diversity, it's based in endless creativity. It's not meant to be one thing or another. It's just a process of creation. There's complete impermanence baked into that. Most creatures in the world, 80% of doves don't make it through the first year. 999 out of 1,000 turtle eggs don't make it to the ocean. Creation doesn't have some moral sense about it. It just wants to create. Different shapes, different sizes, different colors, different mechanisms. And so we can participate in that because we have that ability. We have the ability to recognize the darkest, deepest corners of our being and to recognize our highest light. So we encompass the full spectrum. And life is continuously testing us to accept the full spectrum. That we maintain trust and faith in this world, even when it shows itself to be dark. And that we stay grounded and humble, even when we experience the light.
Going back to my question, can you, in your opinion, can you ever learn from the past experiences at all? Or every time is going to be a different situation, different circumstances, so thinking about it, it will never help?
Can you ever learn from the past? In the process of becoming more present and more allowing, more accepting, trying to learn from the past plays a big role. It gives you the perspective, it brings you the lesson of what am I repeating blindly? What am I carrying over? What am I letting inform from the past into the future? And that brings clarity, that brings a deeper self-knowing. So I would say it's like many things in life, not so helpful to label it as right or wrong or good or bad or should it be or shouldn't it be. But to look at the experience of it and the role it has, because everything we experience plays a role. Yeah, you could reach a point where you say, I'm present so much now that the past rarely surfaces. If it does, then it does so for a reason. And you look for that reason. You don't stay on the surface judgment, the surface reaction. But you go deeper. What is it inviting you to do? All of these surface experiences, like boredom, like procrastination, like worrying, waiting, if you just stay there, then you feel crappy pretty quickly. But they're all an invitation to look deeper, to go within and see what it's pointing to. So the mind might interpret inactivity as boredom, might interpret it as laziness. But it could be a golden opening, a period of stillness, where we download new insights, where we get the inspiration for a new chapter. And if we just stay consumed by the boredom, instead of blaming ourselves for not being talented enough or good enough, then we miss that chance. So that's ultimately what self-awareness is to be aware when we start overthinking, be aware when we start forcing, be aware when we start controlling. And that's when we become aware when, through the sensation awareness, that we are limiting ourselves. And then the task becomes to accept. My mind has wandered again. I just spent the last 15 minutes going down rabbit holes. I just repeated the same blind behavior from the past, finding myself in the same relationship as before, getting triggered again by a conversation with a parent. The key is to learn to accept what happened, go deeper within, notice the sensations, allow yourself to feel that way, and that is what ultimately starts to dissolve that knot. And those are just training wheels. So mindfulness, meditation, if you have a practice, you're not meant to just sit on a cushion 2 hours a day forever. You're not meant to force silence on yourself forever. You're not meant to sit in a controlled environment forever. Rather, those training wheels eventually come off and you go out into life. And that's when the rubber meets the road. That's when you get to apply yourself. All the possibilities of what might upset, what might trigger, all the differences we encounter, different lifestyles, different tastes, different opinions. To learn to accept all that and how it makes us feel. I don't think that sitting in a cave for 20 years and meditating can you prepare you when you come back into the rest of the world for what you'll encounter, because that's a controlled and limited environment. So again, we're supposed to take action, we're supposed to engage, we're supposed to go into the world, we're supposed to do. There needs to be an intelligence to the doing. There needs to be a perspective to the doing. That perspective is the awareness, which is sensation awareness. And that's when the turning, the doing turns into more awareness, turns into self-knowing, turns into clear action. The Buddhists call it right action. Turns into living by your conscience. comes into living from alignment. If you nurture that enough, and the world is here to teach us that, you start to live so exclusively, so unconditionally from your conscience, from alignment, that you can no longer go against it. Because that alignment requires you to be kind to yourself, and to be loving to yourself, and to be accepting of yourself, and to see yourself as you are. And then you have no choice than to treat others the same way. You have to. It's only when we're abusing ourselves that we can abuse others. It's only when we're limiting ourselves that we feel capable to limit others. So it all begins with self and ends with self. Yes.
So I just want to share something related there, the point that you brought up. So I'm sure people have heard of Sadhguru in this room, you know. So he taught me this technique, it's his technique, and he taught this today. And I found it to be the most powerful technique that I've ever used in my life. I'm a devotee of personal development. And the technique is this essentially, that every time you have to make a decision, make sure you are in the most empowered state that you can be. The decision that you will make when you are completely feeling empowered to when you are disempowered will set you in two different directions. Your destiny will be different completely. And I found that to be incredibly profound.
Yeah.
That's interesting, but how do you know that you're, you mean energetically or in high energy state?
You know when you're feeling good, right? You know when you're feeling good, right? And you know when you're feeling bad. It's as simple as that. And you're feeling at your best. So whenever you're going to make an important decision, the first thing you ask yourself is, am I feeling at my best?
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself a simple question like, if I make this decision, what's the worst thing that can happen? And if you can handle the worst thing, just emotionally and mentally, that makes you feel so strong. And if you can't, then just go back to the drawing board. But the most important thing is you always come from that place of feeling completely empowered. Just don't make a decision if you're not feeling empowered. Let it go for days.
And that without risk of what the outcome is. Let's say you made a decision from a very good physician state, but then the outcome was not how you.
You don't worry about that. You just make sure you make the decision from the right place.
So, thank you for sharing that. The way I express the same or similar sentiment is to be aware of your motivation. So, if you're acting from fear or lack of self-worth, or you're not good enough, you don't have enough time, or all of these are specific sensations, and they're feelings of disempowerment. Whatever's contained in the seed is contained in the fruit. And so if you're acting from gratitude and inspiration, and I'm feeling good about this, and I can do this, and that will then be contained in the outcome. It requires a person to be aware of their sensations, to be aware of what motivates them, to be aware of what it feels like to be empowered. So with enough pre-work to have a gauge on that, then that is a very powerful technique. There's quite a journey for many to get to the point where they recognize, oh, I'm acting out of feeling like I'm trying to please somebody. It's a behavior almost everyone learns. Trying to get our parents' attention in their busy lives, trying to keep the ship afloat. And somewhere early on we learn that by crying or behaving a certain way, that we get their attention. So we develop these behaviors of people pleasing, conditions. So a lot of the work, a lot of the journey is about coming out of all that stuff, recognizing what it feels like to be empowered, stepping into your power. There's an important piece there of taking responsibility for your happiness. Because many of us, I remember a time, for myself, of victimhood. Perhaps because we're raised and taken care of for the first years, that this sentiment takes hold that someone is going to keep taking care of us, that somebody's going to save us, that somebody's going to do the work for us. And there comes a point where you really have to shift into, no, I'm going to take responsibility for how I feel, for my actions, for the consequences. That's a big step. Everyone kind of has to go through that. And then adding reminders. So that is a powerful, simple, powerful reminder, because the mind likes to throw all kinds of distractions and different behaviors, different triggers at us, and often we forget. We slip back into making a decision from fear. You could be a seasoned entrepreneur, and you might find yourself again acting from fear. You could be a seasoned parent, and fear might slip in. We need reminders. Some of the, I call them presence prompts that I often mention are, let's see what happens next. Just kind of keep that at the forefront of your mind. It helps you stay out of that victimhood, that, oh, this is a disaster and this is the end and I'm going to suffer forever. If you can maintain this attitude of, well, okay, it's unpleasant, but let's see what happens next. Give it some breathing room, let it evolve, because very often those who have lived more than a few lives everyone has an experience where they can go back and go, yeah, that was awful at the time, but it made me who I am. It made me grow. It forced me to become more honest, to go deeper, to shed a mask, a part of my false self. So was it really a disaster? Probably not. And so this maturity sets in for most people gradually. But you don't have to wait till you manifest big life situations from the unconscious and then let them play out and learn your lesson that way. You can address these blockages and the limiting beliefs with a mindfulness practice. And in a way, get on the fast track of your evolution. All roads lead home to the same place. If you look at what the Buddha went through just to reach to the point where he realized sitting on a tree and stillness is where it's at. Or what Jesus went through to get to the point of forgive them for they do not know what they do, the last second. total acceptance. But so everyone has to go through these stages, everyone has to learn. Some do it more quickly than others. The important piece in the self-development track is that you do it not from a place of rejection of self. It sounds noble, I want to become a better person, I want to get to that place, a place where I no longer react, a place where I no longer judge, a better version of me. But it shouldn't come at the cost of judging who you are now. And again, that's kind of the phase that everyone goes through. We seek. And we can seek for a long time. And if we stay in that seeking mode, then the universe gives us more of what we don't know. It's a mirror. So if we exude the I'm not there yet feeling, then we continue experiencing that. So even there must come a point where we recognize that we will get there, but not by wanting to be there, but by wanting to be here, which is acceptance. And that's what moves us forward the quickest. Sometimes get looks when I say that presence and connectedness and being in the flow and being in acceptance, all that mindfulness and meditation is actually about living a more productive, more efficient life. Because it does, it turns into better doing, more proactive doing that isn't limited to the me, but that is in service to the whole. There's some doctrines that say, ignore the material world and material possessions. But the way I see it is we discover ourselves through the material world, through our seeking ourselves in those things. So it's all designed, it all interlinks perfectly. And the more we recognize this design of life, the more we can play by that playbook. And when we play by that playbook, we feel good. Challenges, yes, but ultimately, they dissolve. They elevate us. They transcend us. And probably only because that's the only way we'll listen. The big struggles, the big challenges, the big traumas tend to no longer happen when you're on board with this design of life. If there's a lesson for which it's necessary, it still happens, but we don't resist it, we don't react to it as vehemently as before. And that lessens its impact. So the more we resist, the deeper and the tougher the lessons, because that's the only way we're listening. It's kind of a tough love. Ultimately, it's love. We complain so much about life getting in the way of what we imagine, only to realize we can't imagine our best life. Ultimately, we're being challenged to come out of our limiting beliefs, to come out of our smallness, to come out of the judgment, to come out of all the stuff that doesn't feel good, that weighs us down. I like to say our job is not to make ourselves happy. Our job is not to make ourselves unhappy. Because that's what we do when we give our attention to negativity. It's when we act from reactivity. We weigh ourselves down. Beautiful questions. Perhaps a minute of stillness. Thank you for co-creating the space.